Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine could not violate its constitution on territorial issues and would not give their land to occupiers. Speaking earlier, he added that any solutions without Kyiv would be solutions against peace. This comes following the confirmation that US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin will be meeting next Friday in Alaska for their first face-to-face meeting since 2019. Speaking at the White House early on Friday, President Trump signalled that Russia and Ukraine were inching closer to signing a ceasefire deal. Well, Moscow has confirmed the meeting and said that they'd invited Donald Trump to visit Russia following the Alaska summit. President Putin has repeatedly said any discussions to end the war would have to include guarantees that the 4 parts of Ukraine occupied during the conflict would remain in Russian control. Aronade Mukherjee has more.
It's official. President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin will be meeting next week, their first in-person meeting since 2019. Confirming on social media, President Trump said the highly anticipated talks would take place on Friday, the 15th of August in Alaska. Interestingly, a meet on US territory, positioning Mr. Trump as the host, holding talks on land that the US purchased from Russia more than a century and a half ago. The announcement came after a meeting between Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin earlier this week, a conversation they described to be constructive. On Friday evening, President Trump indicated that talks will possibly include discussions over territory.
So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both.
Kyiv would be watching anxiously. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly made it clear that his country must be involved in any talks between Russia and the US. There are concerns that without his voice, Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin could agree to concessions that Kyiv may not want.
We are keeping up our talks with partners to find a common position for a solid peace for Ukraine, a real peace. And if everyone can see the opportunities and threats the same way, then we'll be able to get to a lasting peace. There is already a lot of support, and this support is based in the new circumstances when a deadline has been set for Russia for a ceasefire.
The Kremlin has confirmed the talks, calling Russia and the US close neighbors bordering each other. Donald Trump has prided himself in getting peace deals done around the world and has been impatient to see a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. But in the past, 3 rounds of talks between the two countries have failed to bring the war closer to an end. 3.5 years since Moscow's full invasion. Will this face-to-face summit lead to something different? Aronade Mukherjee, BBC News, Washington.
Well, earlier I spoke to Alexander Murishka, who is chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Ukrainian Parliament.
It vividly brings back memories about Munich 1938, because we have very similar situation. First of all, the fate of the country, which is a victim of aggression, is being decided by 2 great powers without participation of this country. So it's a very dangerous situation for Ukraine. And Ukraine should also participate, the president of Ukraine should also participate in these negotiations. And the second big issue, which is reminiscent of Munich 1938, is related to the fact that the aggressor can be rewarded, not punished, for the crime of aggression and for occupation of the territories. It's extremely dangerous situation, not only for Ukraine, but also for international law and for the whole world.
So what about these talks? It is, of course, reports locally, or rather within the US at the moment via CBS, that in terms of territory, that could be swapped, as President Trump said. We're talking about Kherson, Zaporizhia, the Donbass. What's the country's feeling on that? What's the country's feeling on that?
Well, it's kind of difficult to understand what exactly President Trump means by the swap of the territories. But under Ukrainian constitution, it's absolutely impossible. We've been talking before about the need of ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire. But now we see that Mr. Trump's position is changing, but it's changing in the direction which is totally unacceptable for Ukraine from the perspective of our constitution.
Just to back up what you've just said there, Mr. Zelensky has reportedly said that Ukraine cannot violate the constitution on territory. Ukrainians will not give up their land to occupiers. So what hopes then of a positive outcome of these talks, Alexander?
Under the circumstances, what can be done for Mr. Trump just to follow through on his previous ideas and proposals, which means unconditional ceasefire. It might be a good start for any kind of negotiations with participation of Ukraine and with participation of our European allies, and including, of course, the UK.
What about compromises that are going to have to be made? Mr. Trump himself saying that it is very complicated. Just how complex is this? What compromises will Ukraine be willing to give to meet halfway across the table with Russia?
All kinds of compromises should not violate Ukrainian constitution and principles of international law, including the UN Charter. For example, for us to agree that we will return the occupied currently by Russia territories of Ukraine, not as much by using military hand as by using diplomatic and political means, is already a huge compromise.
So, Mr. Zelensky has been speaking weeks, days of frantic talks with European leaders. There are reports that the US are hoping to bring European leaders on board to back this plan. What sort of conversations can you share with us in terms of what those European leaders are thinking or feeling in terms of those talks coming up next week?
I don't know much about these conversations or phone talks which have been held recently because they're confidential. But from what I know, our European leaders are very concerned because they don't understand what's going on. They understand that Putin might be again playing President Trump, and Putin is demanding concessions which are aimed not as much to stop the war, to stop the fighting, but to dodge the sanctions from the United States.
Do you think that the US is being fair to Ukraine at the moment?
Well, we see that President Trump, in his own peculiar way, is trying to help Ukraine. But at the same time, we believe that he can and he should do more, and he should do it in such a way which will not violate our security, international law, and our constitution.
And that was Alexander Mereshka there speaking to me earlier.